The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised.
BUMBLEFOOT. BUMBLEFOOT.
Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you, listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys. They let us think that we're big boys. They let us make a lot of noise, but we ain't rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. For you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you. With you.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghost. It's scaring them.
All right, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Oh, the deeper I fall.
Okay! Game on! Game on! Game on!
The password is...
Alright.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. For you.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hello, Toby. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye-bye.
Please take your seat above us. We're with you. It's perfect pickup. Start. 2, 1. Boost ignition and liftoff.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go, the deeper I
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, and it's great to have you along for the ride on this Friday, September 8th. Saturday, September 9th. If you're on the East Coast or across the pond, hope you had a great day and night. We are live right here in the Great White North on top of the rainy mountains of central British Columbia as we are here for you 7 days a week. We welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live at spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. If you like our music, get your horns up for the guitar god himself, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Bumblefoot is the official sound of Spaced Out Radio. Hey, if you're on social media, you can check me out on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live, tune us in on TuneIn, download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, if you want to take part in this show, you got to do me a favor. You got to sign into one of the chat rooms, either on Revolution Radio, Spreaker, the UPRN chat room, or on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club. Or if you're on Twitter, just use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. I will get to your questions and comments in there as well. Now, if you head to our website for $5 a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler member, and you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, pick up a t-shirt, posters, stickers. We have the Encounter online dealing with everything paranormal, courtesy of our editors, Eric Markham and Everett Thiemer. Check out my latest blog there as well, and if you've had an experience you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. We also have some great video footage from Tim Doyle and UFO Seekers, as well as Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV. We end the first week of September on a paranormal note, as really, who doesn't like to get spooked every now and again? From the Bridgewater Triangle to the most haunted places in America, there isn't a place on this planet tonight's guest won't investigate. Christopher Balzano has been on this show before, just over a year ago, and he's been investigating the unknown for 14 years and runs Massachusetts Paranormal Crossroads, a website dedicated to the paranormal and local folklore of Massachusetts. His writings and investigations have appeared in many respected publications, and he has been asked to speak about urban legends at paranormal conferences throughout the New England area. And of course, he's probably a Boston Bruins fan, and I'm still reeling over 2011, Chris, when you beat us for the Stanley Cup. I'm still reeling. I'm not going to lie. 6 years, still there, man. How you doing? Good to have you back on the show.
I'm doing well. You should know that the day, I grew up a Bruins fan, like diehard Bruins fan. It was in my blood more than any other sport, and I left them completely the day they traded Joe Thornton.
Really?
I felt I'd just been lied to, and it was like a bad relationship, and I just wanted out. So, just so you know, not a Bruins fan anymore.
Well, you know what? I can't complain too much about that 2011 run, and I'll tell you why. Their director of amateur scouting, a guy named Scott Bradley. I had known Scott. I believe he's assistant general manager now. He has been a family friend for, I think I met him when I was like 6 years old. And I remember the day he got hired by the Bruins. He walked into the hockey rink where I was an instructor, and my boss was his former junior hockey teammate. And he says, "Come on, boys, shut it down. We're going to the bar, because I'm going to the show." The day he got hired by the Bruins. And I'll tell you, I don't drink, but that night I drank, because it was all on NHL money, my friend. All on NHL money.
And then, you had devoted so much of your money to it, it might as well give you something back, right?
Exactly. But, just watching him get his dream job, it was exciting, and to be there and he always called me Junior because my dad's name is Dave as well, and we were standing at the bar, and he'd be throwing his arm over me, and he's just hammered. And he's like, "Junior, I'm going to the show." Go to the show. And it was just one of those moments that you don't really think of until the topic comes up. It was fantastic. And then, of course, Milan Lucic, who now plays in Edmonton. I've known him since he was 16 years old, playing junior hockey in Vancouver when I was a sports reporter. So, I mean, to see both of them get to hold the Stanley Cup, I mean, that was memorable for me. But this isn't about hockey. We could talk hockey all night, to be honest, but it's more about the paranormal. What's new in your world? How you been?
I've been pretty good. I'm listening to your bio of me being like, wow, who's that person you're talking about? A lot's changed since not since the last time we talked, because I think I was down here in Florida then, but I am in Florida now.
That's right.
I'm riding out Irma.
That's right. And
so
how you doing?
Keep my mind occupied.
And how you doing with that? Are you and the family safe?
My family has gone to Georgia, the mountains of Georgia, so they're both safe. My kids and my ex-wife are up there, and my current lady is safe with her girls as well. So, it's a weird thing, wanting to or deciding to, because my house is where I live now is not the most safest of places. Like I'm looking around the house being like, 48 hours from now, I might never see this Yahtzee game again. Or I might, I've now found a safe place to hold up for the majority of the storm. And so, it's about 10 minutes from my house now where I am. So Monday is going to be a very anxious day coming back and seeing what has survived. So, that's the way it goes.
You know what? I know exactly what you're talking about, my friend. I don't know if you've been able to tune in, but in July, I was evacuated from my house where I broadcast the show for 15 days because there was a forest fire knocking at our door. And in total, my entire area, there was, I believe, 30,000 people evacuated. Now that's nothing compared to Florida. I do understand that. But to have Mother Nature knocking at your door and you don't know whether or not you're coming home to a house. I remember my buddy Tony, who lives right across the street from me, he was a local firefighter helping, fight these forest fires. And I will never, ever forget the text that he sent me, which was "Leave right now." And I was at my house packing up, and he goes, "Leave right now." And I've never been more scared in my life than that moment right there with that text message. And I actually cried on his shoulder, saying, how much they meant to me. And tomorrow night, and I know you being a paranormal investigator will like this. Tomorrow night in my area, I do a museum tour, a paranormal tour here. And tomorrow night, we're hoping to raise $1,000 from our paranormal tour at $20 a person to donate to our volunteer fire department, because they did so much in trying to keep our homes safe, and they won the battle, and it's a good way for us to give back and say thank you to them. So that's what we're doing tomorrow night.
Well, post that stuff to me. Let me get that stuff so I can put it out to my people as well. They might be able to donate something after the fact for you.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Wonderful. So for our listeners, because the last time you were on, my friend, we didn't have the listenership we do now. We've jumped leaps and bounds since you were last on the show with us. So I want to reintroduce you, Chris, to our audience, and let you explain what you're all about and why you got into the paranormal.
Sure. You had said at the top, Massachusetts Paranormal Crossroads, and that's kind of where it all started for me. It's been about 20 years now that I've been looking into this stuff. It started for me at college. I was at Emerson College, the Charles Gate Hotel, which is one of the most haunted buildings in Boston. And, people were having genuine paranormal experiences there. And people were also, having experiences that were, not them having it, but, oh, no, my roommate's old friend who was here like 5 years ago, this happened to them. And I started to notice that a lot of the stories I was being told were stories that I had heard someplace else. Always been fascinated by the paranormal, always been fascinated by, old stories, especially urban legends and folklore. And and these old great tales of hauntings, and that have these same motifs that run through them all the time. And I really just started documenting what was happening there, and writing down what people were saying, and kind of noticing that, this was some kind of convergence of not only genuine paranormal, but the legends that tend to pop up when you're trying to explain the unexplained. You don't have a reason for why things happen, and so you think it might be something ghostly, you think it might be something, some kind of cryptid, and you just kind of fall back on other stories that you've heard. And over time, those tend to become the truth of it. The legend becomes the truth. A few years later, I opened up a book called The New England Ghost Files, which anyone from New England who's in the paranormal, this is gone on their radar at one point or another. It's probably one of the most famous ghost books for people who are into ghostly tales, but especially a lot of paranormal investigators and a lot of people who are even you might say big names in the paranormal. We've all come across this book, and one Halloween, I just decided, two friends and I went out and we just looked into all the stories we could that were in two of the towns. I come to find out later that the author lived in one of the towns, which is why it was so featured in the book. And we were hooked, and it became, a little bit after that, I launched Massachusetts Paranormal Crossroads, which is now defunct, so don't try to search it. I don't do it anymore. And things just skyrocketed from there. I was looking into the ghosts of this town, not knowing that there was this wave coming from that area, which is, you mentioned at the top, the Bridgewater Triangle. I was looking into these things not knowing they were connected to a larger paranormal thing that people were starting to get hooked on. So as soon as I started posting stuff from these towns that were all in this triangle, I got a lot of responses, and very quickly I became, the go-to person for some of these famous hauntings that are now kind of all over the world. The Bridgewater Triangle has really exploded with the documentary, and then they kind of edited the documentary up and they showed it on Destination America as the, America's Bermuda Triangle. And so it's become very, very popular. And, it's in doing that, I came across probably the most well-known story from that area, other than, Puckwudgies, which we'll get into later, was probably the red-headed hitchhiker of Route 44. And I was right at, this was one of the stories that was featured in New England Ghost Files, but it was right at the beginning of people starting to take what may have been, because there's controversy about, whether the author might have made up the stories just for, filling of the book and to sensationalize them. Just at that moment when people were starting to attach urban legends to it. There were some very straightforward ghostly experiences, and I was able to start documenting that all of a sudden people were making up these weird rules. One of the rules being, for example, if you go to the state line, the town line between where the hitchhiker is, and you honk your horn 3 times and shut off your lights, when you turn them back on, he'll appear in your headlights. Now, that had never been mentioned anywhere before until this first wave started happening. And all of a sudden, this maybe ghostly story was becoming a legend. It was becoming folklore in that area. And that's when I started to kind of get this idea of the crossroads, that intersection of where a ghostly a ghostly experience and the stories that develop around it intersect. And that's what, that's kind of where Massachusetts Paranormal Crossroads was born out of. And since then, it's been a crazy ride. Since then, I've published 2 books specifically on the Triangle. Dark Woods, which features just one town, Freetown, which is, in my opinion, the dark heart of the Bridgewater Triangle. And then Ghosts of the Bridgewater Triangle. And then I got asked to write pretty much like 2 technical manuals on how to look for ghosts. One was called Picture Yourself Ghost Hunting, and Picture Yourself Capturing Ghosts on Film. And I started to really kind of shift my thinking. You used the word investigate when you were introducing me as well, and that couldn't be further from what I do now, I think. I've put the investigation hat off. I put it to the side, and what I'm really doing now is trying to experience. For a long time, especially post Ghost Hunters, after 2004 and the premiere of Ghost Hunters and the current wave of paranormal shows, there's been a real focus on equipment. There's been a real focus on the technology that can be used to have a ghostly experience. I shouldn't even say have a ghostly experience, but to capture ghosts, to try to understand ghosts. We're now 10 years past that, and I don't think we're any closer to an answer. As in a lot of ways, I think we're further from an answer.
I would agree.
Of what ghosts mean to us. Yeah, and so
I'd like to interrupt. I'd like to interrupt you right there, and I want you to continue on this roll. But we talk immensely about that topic in regards to where the hell is all this going. And I think the only thing that all of this technology and the popularity of television has brought people is it's brought people a false sense of trying to satisfy their own spooky interests. It is, I think, absolutely lambasted the meaning of the word science and scientific research. And it's still, maybe you would agree with this, Chris, but to me, it's absolutely brought a black eye to serious investigation.
Right, and I think that I think the problem is, one of the problems is that there is no compartmentalizing in the paranormal world. There is no once you are doing it, you feel that you are the equivalent of whoever else might be doing it, regardless of how they're approaching it or regardless of how long they've been doing it. It's one of those things that because you can for very little money, start a website, start a group, start a website, get out there, investigate, start going into people's homes. There's you get empowered almost immediately as soon as you post on Craigslist that you're looking to form a group. And it's very seductive and it's understandable, and you can see it on TV and you see the edited version of what goes on, and you're like, all right, I got that. Like, I can do that. That seems simple. And some people who I consider good friends of mine came out of that. But, I've seen a lot of people come and go. It's funny that, I wrote Picture Yourself Ghost Hunting maybe 5-6 years after Ghost Hunters. And probably what I would consider in almost like the peak of this paranormal silliness, at least the part that I'm going to describe as silly. And that's when I really started to not investigate, not be as interested in investigating ghosts, but in looking into the personalities of the people who were looking into ghosts. And this very odd, and I think this is somewhat different now. I've noticed that this trend has changed, but it's still there, but it's changed. And that is these tightly governed groups with a hierarchy and a specific role for everybody, as opposed to a bunch of people who are looking to experience the paranormal, and we'll push that to one side because I think that's a viable thing, and then people who are trying to help people, and then people who are looking to control a group. So I was looking at all of these different groups all over the country, and I started to notice this weird trend of, founder, and he would always refer to himself, and it was almost always a male, founder. I'm the founder of this group. then you would have tech specialists, then you would have demonologists, and then you would have folklore specialists, and everyone was becoming very specialized. And I always say the funniest one I ever saw of this title was someone was a skeptic in training. They weren't a skeptic yet.
Oh my gosh.
They
really?
were a skeptic in training.
See, I think my favorite one that I saw was about a 21-year-old kid saying that he had been a demonologist for like 6 years.
Right. Right. Since I heard my first Iron Maiden album, I've been a demonologist.
Exactly.
And it is one of those things where, and so many people that I came up with in the field, got their information from books and from inquisitive minds, as opposed to the media. And so I think that they approached it differently. And a lot of those people are people who are on TV, who are now kind of names in the field. And the people who are now kind of their offspring, the people who grew up now, because we're 13 years away from when Ghost Hunters premiered. We're in this place where the children of this are now kind of running the show, and ultimately it hasn't forwarded anything. And to me, that's fine. Like, I'm not sure the field needs to be forwarded. I like how you phrase it, there's a black eye, because I think there are some people who are conducting research and investigating with an eye on being consistent, being appropriate and professional in all their doings, and presenting for evaluation by their peers.
Chris, let me just ask you one question in regards to that, if you don't mind, though.
Sure.
From what I've noticed in the many paranormal people that I have talked to over the last almost 3 years since I've been doing this, majority of people don't even know what they're investigating. They have no idea what their conclusion is going to be. They have no idea what they're even trying to solve. They hide behind the word, once again, science, and the other word is debunk. And it just seems like there is no focus on what they're even trying to do. So you can get all the evidence you want, but if you're not helping a person or you're not doing anything with the data you've collected, what are you wasting your time for? And that's the question that so many of these paranormal teams cannot answer.
That when I wrote Picture Yourself Ghost Hunting, the very first chapter, that's what I say. The first question you need to ask yourself, and I still hold true to this, the first question you need to ask yourself is, why are you doing this? And if you are, and I literally think, because we're going to get into what I'm doing now, I think everywhere on that spectrum is fine. As long as you know what you are, and you know what you want to do with your group, or your group just by yourself, whatever, and you're realistic in your intent and what you're putting out there. And I think the problem comes from people who want to experience something or be part of something, but don't necessarily want to do their homework. Or they want to can claim themselves to be scientific, but not really understand what that means. So I think that it's fine. However you want it, whatever you want to do in the ghostly field. If you want to, because now I do not investigate. I am a legend tripper, and we can get into why that is. And I think what I do is as legitimate as anyone else I know, but I'm totally straightforward about it. I am totally forthcoming with what we do. And some people are like, well, what about all this other stuff you used to say? And I'm like, well, none of it's not true. It's just where I am now. And this is what I'm doing because I had to put all that other stuff aside. The problem is when people aren't honest with their intent. And, most of it is that they don't intentionally say, I'm going to lie. It's one of those things where they hear the word scientific. If they feel as if that rationalizes their desire to understand this unexplained stuff. And they end up becoming something that they're not really. So they're lying to themselves as opposed to, trying to do it with bad intent. I got to tell you, you said the word debunk.
I hate that word.
Through all of my paranormal journeys, the two words that I hated most were always debunk and client. And I used to, you know, I'm on record as always being like, hate the word debunk. And more importantly, like, I hate the word clients. They're people. Don't call them clients. You're not a professional. You know, you're not. And so, you know, I think that there's been a shift in the paranormal. I think it's coming back to the way that it was before. And I think part of that is because, you know, people have grown weary with it as a hobby. And so less people are sustaining it because for one reason or another, either they were like, you know, now I'm onto something new, or it just, you know, they got to, you know, just franchise with it, whatever. But I always talked about, you know, the heart of a haunting. You know, you need to understand everything that's in context with what's going on, whether you're talking about, you know, you're going into someone's house or whether you're looking into an old haunted story. What is the heart of it? And I think people are getting back to the story. And people are getting back to the idea that someone's experiences are not any less legitimate than you going out there and gaining evidence. And that's really kind of an important shift, I think, that I've been seeing happening the last couple of years. So, you know, I think that it looks good on the horizon.
Well, you bring up an important point because we were in your area at the Provincetown Paracon back in May of this year. We brought a couple members from our team out there, and I spoke there. And it was funny because we're standing around on the Thursday night. We meet this lady, and I'm not going to mention her name, you know, but I know Eric and Everett are listening, and they're probably going to laugh when I bring up this story because we all just laugh and shake our heads. But we meet her on Thursday, the night before the Paracon, and she is just the most pleasant. Oh my gosh, I've heard your radio show. It sounds great. You know, thanks for coming all this way. And, you know, she's dressed normally, looking like a normal person. The next day, she comes into the start of the Paracon where it was a meet and greet and get together on the Friday night, and she is dressed all gangsta, calls herself the paranormal gangsta, you know, and she's got chains and her big black leather boots on and black jeans, black t-shirts and you know, the straight brim cap with these eyeglasses that had a skull in the middle like Charlie Sheen during Major League. You know what I'm saying? And we look at each other and we literally say, "What the F is this?" Seriously, what the F is this? And to us, sorry to interrupt, but to us, I remember us saying that is the epitome of what is wrong with the paranormal, right there.
You know, you want to say that it maybe is like a Sylvester Stallone and over-the-top kind of situation where you have to turn your hat around to, like, get the juices flowing for it. But I think a lot of people have their mindset is, what can I do to stand out? You know, what is my shtick? You know, whether it's because, you know, they want a TV career or whether they just want to stand out in the crowd. You know, there's you know, social media has really, you know, pushed a lot of this stuff forward, and it's really hard to be heard. You know, like there's a great there's a great din out there of paranormal people still, you know, on social media, and they feel they have to come up with some kind of persona or some kind of twist that makes them noticeable. You know, and I think a lot of it has to do with wanting to be on TV, and wanting to you know, be justified in what you do by getting a lot of followers and things like that. You know, it's funny because, you know, at one point, I was an authority on so many different things, you know, and I was kind of at the cutting edge of a lot of what was going on in New England. And then I had to take a step back for like 2 or 3 years, and all of a sudden, no one knew who I was, you know? And it was that kind of like, okay, well, what do? Do you do something outlandish? Like, do I call myself, you know, I don't know, the puck wedgie guy, which is what people used to call me, and try to like push myself in. And Or do I just kind of like, trot along, do what I do, and people find me, people don't find me? It's a lot of pushing and shoving and feeling like you have to differentiate yourself from other people that's going on now. And I think a lot of it, like I said, has to do with getting those followers and getting that TV thing.
I understand that. But when we looked at it, and I'm looking at this not so much from a paranormal view, because as a journalist, which is what I am, I try and take things down the middle. Okay, I'm not a left or a right person. I try and stay as down the middle as possible. And when I'm looking at that scenario with this person, and I'm looking at it from an outsider's perspective, who maybe doesn't believe or maybe is skeptical about what is involved in this field, and I see that, the paragangsta, all I can think of is these people are idiots. No wonder the mainstream has trouble taking anything of what we do seriously. And that is the whole issue. Everybody is dying in this field to be taken seriously and literally by the media, by their peers, by their family. And how can we, when we continually jam that foot so far up our you-know-what, that we can't even walk?
It's a dichotomy because, on one hand, you want to be taken seriously, and you may want, the paranormal to be taken seriously by the vast majority of people. On the other hand, the vast majority of the people are going to follow the paranormal gangsta. You know what I'm saying? Like, what the general audience will accept, and what the mainstream paranormal people or paranormal viewer, paranormal consumer, we'll call it, will accept is exactly what she's presenting. So it's kind of like one of those things where you have to pick your poison. Are you going to be straight down the middle, and maybe not appeal to people, or are you going to do something that is a hook that gets people interested? I've worked in paranormal. We used to have this company called Pararelations, which was a paranormal PR firm, and we were always talking about that. We called it the 40-year-old wife, the 40-year-old mother. Like, that's the person who you want to consume. Well, that person is not going to. First of all, the person's never going to take it seriously. Anyone who works to forward the field, as in they're going to gain general acceptance, or people around the world are going to all of a sudden accept the paranormal as a part of the paranormal that we understand it as part of their life, it's not going to happen. The majority of people who I speak to who genuinely believe in ghosts, the high number of them, 95% of them, didn't ever truly believe until something happened to them personally. So to spend your time trying to convince people that something is real or be taken seriously, I think, is a futile effort. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I don't think, and this is really, really heavy push for so many years, this being accepted as science. It's not going to happen. And so if you devote yourself to those things, as opposed to approaching it from a perspective of, here's what I'm interested in, here's what has worked for me in terms of gathering information, getting information, going to a place, seeing things with equipment that's not designed necessarily to do this. If you can be satisfied with that, that's fine. But I think if you're pushing yourself to have general acceptance by the public, it's not going to happen in the way that you think it's going to happen. Because that 40-year-old mother is going to buy the ghost book that's the most sensational, but she's never going to suggest it for her reading club. I don't know if I could explain it better than that.
No, absolutely. You were right. But you brought up something just a few minutes ago that I think is important. You are now, Christopher, more interested in the personal experience rather than what the research has to hold. I would like it if you define that, because for a lot of people out there, their experience to investigators or researchers today, whether it's Sasquatch, whether it's ghostly, whether it's ufological or alien, the experience for a lot of researchers out there now is completely secondary.
Right. And that's horrible. I really think that is. It's the way that we understand the paranormal. It's very interesting. The way that we understand the paranormal is from firsthand experiences. So we have something that happens to us, and then we evaluate what's going on around us. Okay, so I saw a ghost and the temperature dropped, for example. This is a classic example. I then connect those things, right? And I say, okay, so when the temperature drops, that means that there's a ghost around. Okay, well, why? And I've heard several explanations for why that is, and we don't need to get into, what different people in science, because they've said the exact opposite reasons why. Okay, now I'm going to go look for cold spots, but ignore what people have said about the location, right? So now the thing that sparked us or became the evidence for us, we put aside, right? And we say, well, I don't care what you experienced, I only care what I can document. It's like, but wait a minute, you're documenting things based on what people over the years have said happened. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Continue on.
I got to the point where I was, really talking to people and saying, well, what did you see? And they would say, well, my camera said this, or I photographed them. No. What did you see? Well, look, I was looking through the thermal camera and I got this measurement. Okay, well, what did you see? And they weren't able to answer that. And I'm like, so you went to this haunted location. You went there to experience and document and maybe understand the paranormal, but you spent no actual time experiencing it. So I just started to really get tired of that world, of the world of tech. And I wanted to experience the paranormal again. I think that we are not in awe of the paranormal. And maybe that's part of the reason why we feel the need to scientify it, if I can invent a word. I wanted to gain that awe again, right? So I turned to legend tripping instead. And legend tripping is, sometimes, which I always thought this was a bad idea as an investigator, people don't want to know anything about the location that they're going to. I don't want to know anything. Don't tell me anything. I want to document it all. I don't want what I'm doing to be tainted. I'm the exact opposite. When I go to a location now, and I don't do any private houses or anything like that, when I go to a location, I want to know what people have been saying about it. I want to know what people have experienced it. I want to know what stories have developed around it. I want to know everything that there possibly is to know. And then my partner and I go and we experience it. And in doing that, we say, okay, it doesn't matter whether it happened or it didn't happen, right? What matters is that people are feeling that this place somehow is touched, and they feel touched by touching it. Now let's talk about what does that mean for them? What does it mean for society sometimes, like, the community that's there. And that's what we celebrate. We celebrate, and we try to go have experiences ourselves. And oddly enough, even though we don't aim to, I've gotten some of the best evidence that I've ever gotten by not looking for evidence. And so, it's one of those things. I'll give you a great example of what I mean by its impact. So you were talking about St. Pete when we were talking off the air. So we heard of this urban legend called the Mini Lights. I don't know if you've heard this, if your friend from St. Pete's heard this, the Mini Lights of St. Pete. And we wanted to go and experience it. So the background story is, depending on which part of the legend you follow, that there was a witch who had 2 sons who maybe they're dead, maybe they're not dead, but they attack you at this location in St. Pete, right? And you can get them to pop up because they're dead now, but their ghosts are still there. And they're these white, huge white orbs that'll cross this field and come running after you and freak you out. You just have to go to the bridge and say, mini lights, come out tonight. Sounds great. I want to experience that. I want to know why people are talking about that story. I want to know what they're saying about it. And then I want to go to that bridge and I want to try to find the exact location. And we actually had to hit 3 different places because the story was, in 3 different areas near St. Pete. I want to go and I want to say, mini lights, come out tonight. And I want to see if I can get those orbs to chase us. Not because we're just looking for the thrill, but we're trying to touch the legend that is there. In looking into that story, what we found was this, and it's funny because we asked person after person, hey, have you ever heard this story? Have you ever heard this story? At some point, this shifted from being a community legend to being an African-American community legend. In terms of the story was no longer being told by everybody, but somewhere about 20 years ago, it had shifted to being almost a symbol of the racial divide that's in that town. That's when anyone who's anything about St. Pete, think the Tampa Bay Rays. Tampa Bay Rays move in, and they really try to change the neighborhood to make it more pleasing for people to come in, right? In doing that, they tried to whitewash a lot of what that community was. They tried to clean up areas. They tried to make it more appealing for people coming out of town. And in doing that, a lot of the African Americans that were living there felt like their neighborhood was losing its identity. All of a sudden, at that same exact time, this legend shifts from being a whole community legend to being a African American legend. And the story then becomes, if you are black and you are out and you do this, the mini lights will come and get you. So make sure you stay in your house. Stay out of the nicer sections of St. Pete because the mini lights are going to come and get you.
That's kind of strange how it all of a sudden culture brings culture into everything when in reality the paranormal has nothing to do about culture.
Yeah, I think I would disagree with that because I think our understanding of the paranormal is based on the society we live in, the time we live in. I think it's based on even the area that we live in. So I do think there's a connection between the way that we understand the paranormal. Yes, from a straight, if you want to think of it as a scientific thing, a straight down the middle process, it should be in a vacuum that doesn't include any of those things. But the fact of the matter is, someone who's investigating in Arizona is going to be different from someone who's investigating in New England, just because culturally those 2 areas think differently about ghosts. One might have a different Native American flair to it because they're heavily influenced by that. Someone might, one area might have, a great connection to a Civil War ghost. And so everything there is tainted by Civil War aspects. Like I find that here in the South. One might be more influenced by the Revolutionary War. And so, and I guess, a voice on a tape recorder is a voice on a tape recorder no matter where you are. It's the story of what that voice is, I think, that changes from area to area.
Well, I know in the haunted tour that I do, we actually got EVPs of a ghost cat.
Really?
A ghost cat. You know what? Hold on 1 second here. I actually just cut the audio to one of them here. Let me see if I got it here. And I'll play it. Where is it here? Now I gotta find the damn thing again, but that's okay. Maybe it's on my main screen here. Where did it go? How hard can it be to find a title of Ghost Cat? Oh, here it is. Hold on a second here. It's gonna load up here. It's amazing what you can find on an EVP. If it ever loads up. Son of a gun. The computer can't handle the pressure right now. Oh, what the hell? We'll move on. I'll try and get that going for you.
Okay.
I'll try and get it going for you, but one of the things I do want to mention in regards to the experience that people are having, oh, now it decides to load up, that people are having is the fact that we have a lot of people out there in this field who've never experienced anything. Oh, there's the audio to it as it loads. I'll just turn that down and we'll replay it. But there is a lot of people out there who've never even had an experience, yet they call themselves an expert or an investigator or researcher of the paranormal. Is that just the biggest oxymoron, or are they just so skeptical that they won't even recognize the evidence that they have captured?
I think that some of it is inexperience, like in terms of they're probably capturing things and not realizing they are. I think you can look into ghosts. I think you can consider yourself an investigator, even if you have never had an experience. And I think what they would say is that, like, well, that makes me a better because I'm so skeptical that I just don't experience things. Like, I debunk everything, and that kind of idea to me is not very kosher. But I think that you can be someone who genuinely is open and looks for stuff, and it just never happens for you. If you take a step back and you say, like, okay, how about cryptozoology, right? Or how about ufology? How many of those people have ever had a UFO experience or a Bigfoot experience? And it's going to end up being very few, right? Like, there's not a lot of people in those fields who have had one-on-one encounters or stuff that they can't explain. It's just a lot of time looking. So I think that you can be well-versed and not have had anything actually happen to you. But, if you're in a haunted location and you don't get any evidence, if you don't get anything, then, I think you're using your equipment the wrong way.
Okay, I got this lined up now. Okay, so let's
go ahead.
see if you can hear this here. Let me turn up the volume here. Here's our cat at our local ghost house. Are you hearing that okay, or do I need to turn it up more?
No, I'm hearing it.
Yeah, I'll turn it up just a little bit for our audience here. Hold on. Oh, that's a little too loud because it distorts. There you go. That's our ghost cat. Apparently there's a few of those in there that I gotta pull out. But that kind of excites me. Ghost cat.
It does. It does. And it's, one of the things that I tell my co-host and partner, Natalie Christ, who is a great researcher into anything. She can find anything. Needle in a haystack, she's got it. One of the things that that I have to work on with her is the seduction of getting something. I've gotten more EVPs that are making sense in the moment. Because that's one thing we always do. We always have a recorder on, mainly so we can document what's going on. We've gotten more EVPs that are directly related to what's going on, not just random get-outs, but conversations that are having or conversations that we're recording. And she wants, we got to do this all the time. We got to do it. And I'm like, okay, but remember that we don't want to focus so much on that we're not in the moment, because I think that it's okay to investigate, and I think it's okay to legend trip, but once again, like, you gotta, like, which one are you? I don't think you can I don't think you can serve both of those masters. And so, we constantly have to redirect ourselves because there's a great seduction in getting things that are on tape or getting pictures or getting, evidence that you've never gotten. We never look at temperatures. We never do EMF readings. We never do any of that stuff. In my opinion, the most evidence type thing we get is audio, because I think a lot of what we're doing, the stories are, people are having conversations, like we did a Talking Mary statue. Well, if you go to a Mary statue that's supposed to talk back to you and you don't record that, you're not really experiencing what's supposed to be happening, right? Because this woman's supposed to be conversing with you. So I think in trying to document a lot of what we've done, we've got a lot of really crazy evidence, but we have to fight that being seduced by going out to try to get the evidence. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
It totally does. And I just want to say we got about 60 seconds before we have to go to break. When you talk about the seduction of the evidence, are people open-minded enough to accept what is evidence and what is not?
Wow, only 60 seconds to answer that, huh?
Well, we could carry that over to the break.
Yeah. No, I think it finds its audience. I think what we're doing find like people who are looking into that, because no matter how much people say they are into a science-based understanding, those same investigators are still telling me the same urban legends that act as the background or the reason why there's the haunting. And so they always end up going back to those same kind of haunted motifs. And so I think that some people who are just evidence-based are not going to maybe enjoy what we do. But the fact of the matter is that you can only listen to EVPs so much before they all kind of start to sound the same, if that's the only reason why you're listening.
Well, let's get more into that in the next hour, Chris, because I think it's going to be a very, very good hour number 2 as we look more into the paranormal, legend tripping, ghost hunting. We're going to get into more with author Christopher Balzano. You can find all of his books on Amazon.com. I highly suggest you check them out. They're pretty cheap as well. So, audience, get in there, buy them up, because they are affordable. Hey, we have people on here looking to buy books or sell books for about $100. So spending $15 or $20 is well worth it. More paranormal talk as we round out the first week of September right here on the Mighty SOR. We'll be back right after this.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your Four Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Want a place to share your experiences without feeling judged? We have the place for you. If you've experienced sightings or contact with ETs, ghosts, cryptids, or UFOs, and you'd like someone to confidentially look into the matter, just fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our goal is to help you get the answers you need to the experiences you've had with our professional team of researchers. Your information stays 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines report. Fill out your experience today only at spacedoutradio.com.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you along for the ride. We got the weekend crew coming in. Saturday for Spaced Out Saturdays, Dave Cruz. Sunday, Elizabeth Anglin's Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Sundays. It's going to be a lot of fun going on this weekend. And also, I will be on the air with S4 after Dave Cruz's Spaced Out Saturdays, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern. I'm going to be hanging out with Eric Cooper, Eric Markham, R. Keith Andrews on their roundtable. It's going to be a lot of fun, so I hope you all tune on in this weekend as well. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. Great to have you with us as well. We are also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Terpsichorean. Terpsichorean is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect with me live during the show, like Sailor, like Goddess Michelle, God of Thunder, Mr. Skeptic, Dennis. It's great to have you there. We are also on Facebook at Space Traveler. Man, I'm getting all tongue-tied here. You can give our Facebook page a like. There we go. Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also join our chat in the SOR Space Travelers Club on Facebook. All you got to do is sign up for that. It is free. It is fun. Good people in there like Robert, Bob, Mike. They're all in there. We got our Spreaker chat looking good as well. You can follow me on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. You can listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn and download and subscribe to our show on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. You can also shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, rock out to some Bumblefoot, read some Encounter Online news, or check out videos by UFO seekers, as well as Contact TV, everything at spacedoutradio.com. Tonight we are talking with paranormal author, researcher, experiencer, Christopher Balzano. He's going the distance with us tonight. You like how I threw in that experiencer?
That was awesome. Dig it.
Now, I do want to get back to that EVP for a second, because Carrie, who is my partner in running the ghost tour at our museum, she's actually the one who got it. And she's wondering what you thought about it.
Well, like I said, I thought that it had actually potential to be a human voice. But, you know, it goes back to the very first conference I did years ago, and people were debating whether this EVP said, like, you know, I am here versus I hear, like, you know, and people were attaching all kinds of different meaning, and they were arguing about this, and I jumped in and I'm like, whoa, stop. That voice isn't supposed to be there. Like, that's crazy, you know? I mean, and that kind of leans into what what we've been talking about in terms of the experience. I think that it's crazy. That screech, that meow was not there. You did not hear it, which means you captured something that was not there.
Well, see,
and any time that you can do that, I think it's pretty amazing.
Well, the story behind that is where they caught the cat is on the upstairs floor of what we call the 105 house. There is a little girl named Emily who runs around there. So Carrie and her friends who were up there doing an EVP session trying to get the little girl Emily to speak, and they did get her. When they asked her if she was ready for bed, we did get an EVP that says, no, I just haven't edited the audio yet. But when we played it back, and what they were doing, what they were doing is they were actually reading nursery rhymes to the little girl. Because we figure she is between 5 and 7 years old. So it was about 11 o'clock, and we were reading nursery rhymes, or Carrie and her friends were reading nursery rhymes to it. And the cat, we didn't expect the cat at all. We didn't know the cat was in the house. We knew of the spirits in the house. We know where they're located. But the cat was something completely new. And we also had one lady on the tour back in April get scratched by the cat. Ooh. So when we put this cat together, and then we find out or pardon me, the scratches, and then we find out that we got a couple EVPs of the cat. That's where we put 2 and 2 together, that there's actually a ghost cat running around the house.
You know, and what did you do? You legend trip that.
Absolutely.
by going and wanting to talk to, you know, and playing with that ghost, you essentially were legend tripping. You know, and as
exactly.
And then you got evidence because of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you know, I think that's kind of the essence of experiencing as opposed to just investigating.
Well, and you know what? They went that one step further. And the one thing that really impressed me with Carrie and her friends was they took it to a different level. They weren't there, can you tell us your name? If you don't turn the lights on, we're going to burn down this house. You know, they weren't doing crap like that. They were actually talking to the child like the child was a human being, which the child was at one point. Right? And I think that's so much different than what we are doing. So, you know, Carrie is just a budding investigator, and she is going to be absolutely amazing. And one of the things that I'm trying to show her and other people who are getting involved with us is have an open mind. Treat the spirits with the exact same respect that you would want to be treated yourself. And that's what we are trying to do, and Carrie is... I can't speak highly enough of her. I know she's listening, and I'm not trying to, you know, make her blush or anything, even though we can't see her. But she is going to be an amazing investigator because she truly does care. And I think when we get into what we were talking about in the first hour of the show, late in the first hour, how many people, when they go on an investigation, truly can say they care, Chris?
Yeah, and that they're willing to meet the ghost on their level, right? So if there's a ghost and it's supposed to be from, you know, 1776, and you're like, manipulate my flashlights, you know, like, what the heck's a flashlight? You know? As opposed to being like, okay, I'm in this moment, what would appeal to them? What would they understand? Meet the ghost on their level. And I think so many people don't do that because they're stuck in this kind of idea that they have to investigate or look into ghosts one way, as opposed to, you know, all the other different ways that might play with that.
For sure. Does it affect the experience, though? And what I wanted to ask you about the experience, as we continue on that conversation for just a little bit longer, do you think there's a lot of investigators out there that are afraid to have that experience?
Good, interesting question. I think that I don't know if they're afraid to have an experience. I think that they're afraid to have something that they can't control, or something that doesn't fit into what they understand as being a ghost. You know, I think that investigators approach what they do from whatever religious aspect, you know, they approach it from, whatever belief system they approach it from. And so they sometimes are not willing to experience something that is outside of that. So there was this woman who I never actually, it was after I moved to Florida, and she was in Massachusetts, so I never got to meet her. I was able to hook her up with some people who I respected up there. And she had contacted me because she had seen me on television talking about Pukwudgie. And she had seen this Pukwudgie in her house, along with all this other crazy stuff that she experienced. It would be a book in of itself, what was going on in this house. And one of the things she had done was she had called in a group who was billed as being highly respected in that area. And she brought them in, and they were in her house, and they asked her to leave, which is always weird to me. They asked her to leave, and then they were investigating, and she was literally outside. And as she was outside, she's looking into the house, and she sees this dark figure walking in the first floor of the house with this, what she described as a Pukwudgie, like on a leash, going through the bottom of her house. and the investigators were upstairs. And so she runs into the house, and she tells the investigators, like, it's downstairs, go downstairs. And they were like, we are not finished investigating this quadrant. All right? So, like, literally, they were not willing to go something that was out of the norm, because they wanted to experience the ghost on their terms. They wanted to see it, and they wanted to document it the way that they felt it had to be. And so the team ends up leaving, and she goes back into her house, and she goes into her den, and the website of the group is up, and it's scrolling through the member page, and it's scrolling through the member page and clicking, right, on individual investigators that were there that night, and then going back to the investigator page and then clicking on the next investigator. And she's literally watching it scroll down the screen and click on the different links. And she's watching it, right? She told that to the group, and the group was like, we are never going back there again. There's a demon in your house. Get out. That's a great example of, like, not necessarily willing to confront the ghost that you claim so highly that you want to go and see.
Well, you know what? I'm curious to get your opinion on this then, okay? Because at the museum, we have a spirit named Willie. And Willie understands why we do the tour, to help raise money for the Heritage Site, which is a non-profit society. But he hates the tour. Okay? He doesn't like people coming in. He has attacked people, made people sick, made people violent. Okay, I literally had to go have a talk with him because apparently he was upset with me. I had to go have a talk with him. I brought him a beer. I brought him a cigarette, and now every time I go do a tour, like I'm doing tomorrow night, I will, kind of cordon off his area, and in his area where he likes to hide, I'll put which is in a closet, I will put the beer and I'll put the cigarette there. And what we end up doing is we kind of cordon off his area, through a psychic, Elizabeth Anglin, who does Cosmic Passport here on Sundays. Willie, myself, and her had a conversation, and basically what it was Willie doesn't like the tour, but the other spirit that's upstairs in the building, her name is Mary, she loves people coming around, and Willie loves Mary. And so one of the rules that we came up with was, I said, do you want me to shut down this building for the tour? He goes, no, Mary wouldn't like that. Don't do that. So we kept it open. I said, okay, so here's the deal. We will bring people into your room. He doesn't like technology. Okay, he doesn't like stupid questions like, can you bang on this wall 3 times or whatever. Right? He doesn't like anything like that. So what we do is we take the tour, we go upstairs, and we go into his area. I'll let people circle around, have a look in there, and then I'll move people on out. He doesn't like people touching anything in the room. Even though it's a bare room, don't touch the walls. We had one person touch the wall, immediately had to leave the building because she got sick. That's how powerful this guy is. So when you have a spirit...
How old is he?
We're believing Willie lived probably 120, 150 years ago.
Right, and how old is he?
I don't know. I'm going to say between his late 30s and early 50s, maybe late 40s.
Oh, okay. I thought it was a kid.
No.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm going to try and find out, though. But I don't investigate him. But the fact is, like how much, when it comes to paranormal, how much do you have to take those types of situations into account so you're not only caring for your own safety, but for the spirit's safety as well?
Once again, ultimately, I think that the spirit's environment is what should remain intact. We went to this, it's the newest episode that's up of Tripping on Legends. We went to the 100 Step Cemetery in Brazil, Indiana. And we were scared to death. You have to get there at exactly midnight if you want to trip the legend, right? The legend is you go up the steps. You have to count the steps, right? And then you go to the top, and the original Undertaker's ghost will appear to you and show you a vision of how you're going to die, right? But you have to do it exactly midnight. And it is in a extremely remote location. It was, pitch dark. I mean, and I think we started reading about people's experiences on the way there, and we had a pretty intense day anyway. And by the time we got there, we were frightened out of our minds, and we didn't want to do it. Or, I should say, my partner Natalie didn't, we were hesitant to do it. And I said, listen, in everything that we've done, no matter how freaky, no matter how scary, we always approach it with an open heart and with the best intentions. We've never gone someplace and provoked anything. We've never approached it from almost like a using thing. Like, we want to know what the story of these ghosts are, and we feel that by doing that, we're respecting whatever they might be as both a spirit and as how they lived. And I think that's essential. I have been to Lizzie Borden's a lot, and I have seen people do all kinds of different things there. And one of the things that's very popular to do there is to get those spirits riled up, to start yelling at Andrew Borden that he had molested Lizzie, and that's why she killed him, or to try to provoke Lizzie by saying different things. Oh, you're a murderer, and you're burning in hell. And people eat that up. They eat that stuff up. And I'm like, okay, is there any proof of that? In terms of the molesting thing, would you want to be accused of being a child molester? How are you supposed to approach this from any kind of positive place? And they're like, well, we don't want to necessarily, we just want to get something to happen. I'm like, okay, so you're just going to go into a bar and start insulting people in the hopes that you get to see someone, get into a bar fight? It doesn't make any sense to me. But I think that those who do it best, even though the situation might be dangerous or scary, if you're doing it with good intentions and you're doing it to respect what's there, even if what's there is dark, then I think that you're going to be okay.
I want to change gears here because we're getting a lot of people asking about the Pukwudgie and, the black, the triangle there. Why all of a sudden did I forget the name? Bridgewater Triangle. I always want to call it Blackwater, but that's just way too paramilitary for me. But explain to people what a Pukwudgie is.
Okay. Well, my perspective on this has now completely changed due to Tripping on Legends looking into the Indiana aspect of the story, which we can kind of get into. So the traditional definition of a Pukwudgie is like a little troll-type creature. That it was this monster creature. It's really hard to define. It lies in the shady areas between a cryptid or an elemental, or is it its own ghostly kind of thing? But it was these, made between 2 and 3 feet tall, and it's a nasty little thing. Throughout its history, it has been a trickster originally, and then it kind of became more malicious. I'm kind of in the chat room now, and someone said a gnome. The very first one that I got, the first report I got was almost identical to what you would consider a garden gnome.
You know what? I got to stop you right there because I know who's pulling that stuff. That has to be Trip and Fool in the chat room, and he tries to bring. He knows how much I hate garden gnomes, my friend. He knows there's one thing that scares the living daylights out of me is garden gnomes. And now, because he brought it up, it's going to go all over Facebook, all over Twitter. I'm going to be hammered by garden gnome pictures now. People scaring the daylights out of me.
Anything I can do to help.
Yeah. Thanks, Trip. Good friend. Go ahead.
But the original reports were much more of, I think Fiona Broom described it really well when she originally said a Grover on a bad day. And I don't think she had children because she described hers as red. And I'm like, you mean Elmo, right? Elmo on a bad day. What I'm coming to find in my research on this is that there are many different varieties of things that are being called puckwudgies. The basic description, like I said, 2 to 3 feet tall, generally elongated nose. They've been seen as being extremely hairy, as having like a little belly that kind of goes over, maybe they're wearing clothes, maybe they're not, but it goes over kind of like their lower area. But I've also heard them being described as being covered in red fur. I've heard them being described as having porcupine quills, which I've never actually heard anyone actually say that or report that. It's just kind of something that the internet has kind of made up. And for the Wampanoag, these were something that they lived with on a daily basis, and they would do these horrible little things, but they were just, like annoying, horrible little things. Part of the folklore behind puckwudgies is that Mashop, the creator spirit, went away. He basically was having an affair on his wife and went away for a while. And during his absence, the puckwudgies went crazy. And they went from just being tricksters and pulling these little pranks to murdering Wampanoags, to kidnapping children in the forest, to burning parts of the village, all these kind of really vicious things, until Mashop came back and he kind of pounded them into the ground after they killed his sons, of course, and he threw them all across the United States, right? He shook them up so they wouldn't be able to find their way back. And it sounds like this really interesting little folklore. But the problem is I found that folklore because I was getting people who were having firsthand experiences with this. They were seeing this little creature all over the Bridgewater Triangle, and they didn't have a name for it. They didn't know what it was. Now, the interesting thing is, when I started doing this research, if you typed puckwudgies into a search engine, the only thing you were going to find was a reference to a book called The Good Giant and the Bad Puckwudgies. There was no research. There was nothing on the internet whatsoever about puckwudgies. So I started publishing these stories. I connected it to, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Dover Demon before. It's kind of a famous Massachusetts cryptid encounter. Joe Citro, in his book, started to he was trying to explain what the Dover Demon might be, and he mentioned the word puckwudgies, and I was like, well, what's that? And that's when I started my research. Like I said, there was nothing out there, so I started going to the primary sources that this kid's book were based on, and I found that these were the exact same experiences that people were having. These small creatures, they were vicious, or not vicious in the moment, but they were, I would say, malicious. In terms of almost every experience, firsthand experience that I was documenting, and this is in the early 2000s, the person would be in the woods, and they would come across this creature, and they would look, and then it wasn't there. And then several days later, they would be in what they would consider a safe place, and the puckwudgie would appear. Never hurt them. Always be watching them. Almost as if to say, you may know where I live, but I definitely know where you live. And then those people would never go to that part of the Bridgewater Triangle again. And so, the more that I was researching this, I was seeing like, well, this is something real. This isn't just something that's happening. And of course, since then, puckwudgies have exploded. They're kind of a paranormal superstar now, to the point that they've gone from this obscure legend that I was able to kind of fish out of a random book to they're one of the American Hogwarts houses, in the new J.K. Rowling universe. Like, they're that popular now. There's puckwudgie beer. There's puckwudgie band. I've just learned that there's this game where people build countries, and there's now the Kingdom of Puckwudgie, which is this socialist society of, I'm like, well, how did this happen? And it's really interesting. The folklorist in me takes a step back and realizes that so many things that people reported to me that I pushed out are now part of this bigger picture, because there wasn't information about it. Anything that people said, they'd slightly twist it, and then all of a sudden that would become like solid. You know what I'm saying? We were like putting our hands in wet concrete, and then all of a sudden it all kind of froze on me, which is interesting because, sometimes probably the weirdest experience, I think you and I talked about this last time I was on Paranormal State, that old TV show, Paranormal State. They brought me in as an advisor. And I had mentioned something about strawberry cake, because Mashop, the creator god, only decided to go after the Pukwudgies when they got into his strawberry cake, because don't mess with God's strawberry cake. And the people who were having the experience wanted to get rid of the Pukwudgies. And this is all over the phone, right? I was a speaker box. You didn't actually see me on the show. I was just a speaker box like Charlie's Angels. And they asked me, how do we get rid of a Pukwudgie? And I said, how do you get rid of a Pukwudgie? There's really no documented way of doing it. You kind of just ignore them and they go along their way. And they said, well, can we plant a strawberry bush? And I said, a strawberry bush? Huh. Okay. Well, I mean, it can't hurt, I guess, plant a strawberry bush. And the way it appeared on television was, how do we get rid of a Pukwudgie? And then my voice going, plant a strawberry bush. And from that, all of a sudden, strawberries became crucial to the Pukwudgie lore. And now it was, if you want to hunt Pukwudgies, put strawberries out. If you want to get rid of Pukwudgies, you can get rid of them by surrounding your house with strawberries. Like, it'll attack Baskin-Robbins if they're having a good supply of strawberry ice cream. And it really was one of those things where, something that I had said, which even came out as edited, became part of this bigger story. So now, that's 100% part of the lore of, even though it's not documented anywhere, part of the lore is this thing with the strawberries.
When it comes to the Bridgewater Triangle, what makes that place such a haunted vault of activity?
I think the number of people with their eyes open. You can say that it's like any haunted area in the country, right? Like, people want stories. They want their area to have this cute these stories, these weird things that happen. It's good for tourism. It's good for ghost stories told, during sleepovers. Like, there's a certain appeal to it. What I always tell people about the Bridgewater Triangle is the reason why I became so popular back in the day was not because I was good at what I was doing or a good writer or anything like that. Although, I would like to think I'm a good writer, but who knows? The fact of the matter was, people were experiencing things and looking specific keywords of what they were experiencing and finding the Bridgewater Triangle, right? It was always there. People just, when the internet really started to come into being, they were having these experiences, or they had them when they were younger, and they were trying still to understand them. We call it a triangle, but in actuality, it's not. It's kind of grown out from that. Loren Coleman, when he originally designed it, kind of used the three Bridgewaters, East Bridgewater, West Bridgewater, and Bridgewater proper, as a starting point and started to span out, right? And he never meant it to be set in stone, right? It was a template. And so what we've really discovered over the last couple of years is that it's more globulous than that. It's not a triangle, although, you can tell a Bridgewater Triangle experience because it doesn't necessarily have a reason for it, right? Two people are in a bar, one shoots the other one, and now the ghost of the guy who died is at the bar, right? He goes there every night looking for the guy to come back, and that's why you can see his ghost. Bridgewater Triangle stories don't necessarily have that cute prepackaged background to them. It's more the kind of place where weird things happen, where people who have gotten along their whole lives move into an apartment together, they start having these weird experiences, and then they hate each other for the rest of their lives until they move out of the Bridgewater Triangle, and then they're friends again, even if they move in together in another place, right? Or there are these, unexplained lights in the sky, and you don't have a story for why they're there, right? There's no background story. There's no connective tissue to something else other than this is the kind of stuff that happens in the Bridgewater Triangle. It's a great. First of all, it's all everything that you can possibly imagine in the unexplained world. You'll find there. You've got giants and puckwudgies. You've got zombies. You've got ghosts. You've got Bigfoot. You've got Thunderbirds. Everything that people. You've got UFOs, and you've got time slips. Everything that you're looking for happens there, and it's not one of those things where it happens and we document it and we look at it, as something that's not relevant to today. It's all that stuff is still going on today, and so it's a living, breathing thing. So where someplace like Gettysburg, you are going there and you're getting like a snapshot of what was going on during the Civil War, right? And the ghosts are related to the battle, and this location here is where this happened. And the Bridgewater Triangle is something that the people who live in this huge area sometimes deal with all the time. And they kind of just like, oh, yep, that's what happens when you live in the Bridgewater Triangle. And so the fact that it's not, the background story is not long ago, although, the reason for it might be, it's now, it's here, it's in your face, and then the other kind of appealing thing to it from trying to understand it is so much has happened there that is classic explanations for the paranormal. It falls on ley lines. There's a huge amount of recording rocks that are there. It's got this running water. It's got a history of an absolutely brutal war that happened in the area. Like all the things, if you are into something in the paranormal and you are leaning towards something that explains the paranormal, I think that all paranormal can be explained by ley lines. You're going to find it there. Really, it's just like matching up those two things, and that's part of the interest for people who are living there, but then also people from the outside. It's got great stories, it's got great explanations, and it's still living and breathing today.
Why do you think everything triangulates into one area? And I ask that because up in my area where I am, Chris, it is like a paranormal researcher's delight. Everything from UFO and alien activity that is constant around here to the entire area of what we call the Caribou region of British Columbia being haunted to Sasquatch being around here. There's I've received reports of Dogman a few hours north of me. There's fairies, there's ghosts, there's absolutely everything in this area. What do you think causes these areas to become so active with absolutely everything?
I think it emanates out, whether that's a vortex or whether that's some kind of rip in the universe or whatever might cause these things. And I think those areas where that's happening, I think a ghost can be anywhere. A ghost could be in this room with me right now. But I think that these stronger paranormal waves emanate from something and they echo out. And when they echo out, what they do is they draw things in, right? So, something that, and this is one of the things when I wrote Dark Woods, my first book, I was looking to understand if the paranormal things that were going on in Freetown, which was one of Lauren Coleman's original apexes, if the paranormal things that were going on there had anything or any connection to the horrible crime that was going on there for a small town, right? This is a place that had both zombies and puckwudgies and ghost stories, and then it also had cult killings and high levels of strange crime that were in the same location. I was saying, are these same things that are causing ghosts also, and zombies and all these kind of things, also causing this crime? And my conclusion that I came to in doing research on both of those things, so it was a true crime book and a ghost book, was that it invited things in, right? It sent out like a magnet and it drew stuff in. And so a killer might do their business in another part of the state, and then they would travel to Freetown to dump the body. And so it became a Freetown murder, right? Because the death is there, you're investigating, you're trying to figure out. And I think the same thing. I think that the levels of cult activity that were going on there were because people were drawn to it, because people who were into the lighter side of things like magic and Wicca were also finding this a high energy area. The Wampanoags found this a high energy area. They were drawn to this location. So I think what happens is, for one reason or another, the cause of which I don't know, the result I know is that, the Bridgewater Triangle, or where you're talking about in Canada, I think it feeds on itself, and it becomes almost like this cycling, living, breathing thing where if you're into something weird, or something weird is going to happen, or the energy's there, it sucks it in. It wants it to be there. And so that then kind of feeds the beast, and then the beast gets stronger and kind of emanates more, and it kind of just continues to cycle around.
Do you think there is some sort of connection between, let's say, Bigfoot, paranormal, UFOs, and anything else strange that is found in that area? I think that part of that is perception. So when I started to publish my work on Pukwudgies, I got a lot of people who wrote back to me who said, I always thought that I had seen an alien, that it was an alien abduction episode, and reading your Pukwudgie description, I think that I had encountered a Pukwudgie, that it was a Pukwudgie that was in my room that night. Now, those are two things that can easily be confused, but you're not going to confuse an orb with a Bigfoot, right? So you're not going to misidentify those two things. But I think that cryptids are really difficult because, you have the side of it, which is that it's a completely scientific thing in that we just haven't identified it yet, right? And then you have the other extreme of that, which is, no, they're aliens who travel through different vortexes from one place to another, and so you have that kind of those two kind of ends of things, very mythical, as opposed to science just hasn't found enough information to document what it is yet. But I think that there is some kind of connection to it, because if you listen to some cryptozoologists, they talk about the migration of Bigfoot, right? Or they talk about the migration of these thunderbirds, or of pterodactyl type creatures, or these demon dogs. The reason why you can't find them is because they migrate. They go from place to place. Well, I don't think it's a coincidence that when they go from place to place to place, they're going to places that have other unusual things going on. Like whether they're drawn to it, whether they're like moths kind of coming to the flame, or whether these places have some kind of historical background for them. But I definitely think there is some kind of connection between all of those things. I don't think there's a unified theory. I don't think that we can come up with some kind of formula which explains all of these things that are in our periphery, all these unexplained things. But I do think that they're connected somehow. I want to get to a couple questions here. First off, Gail is asking, she was actually looking up your books on Amazon and was wondering if you have any Kindle versions of the books.
I know that that Haunted Objects has a Kindle version, and I know that I think all of them except for my Bridgewater Triangle books have Kindle. My Bridgewater Triangle books were from Schiffer, who is very anti-ebook. But the other ones should all be available, including the Picture Yourself Ghost Hunting and Picture Yourself Capturing Ghosts on Film. But don't buy Picture Yourself Capturing Ghosts on Film. It's not that good of a book.
Mm-hmm. All right. And
I can honestly say that.
Well, we heard it from the author's mouth, so why not? So there you go, Gail. They are on there, so make sure you look them up. And Tracy is asking, when it comes to the Pukwudgie, was that a real possession that took place on your YouTube video?
Okay, good. Okay, so it's complicated. The first thing I always try to say to people about the video is it's a commercial, right? It's a commercial to get you to buy the book. So obviously I put something sensational out there. I worked with Maureen Wood before, and she has a habit of doing that kind of thing. She's a trans something medium, and so whatever is there speaks through her and overtakes her. And my instinct is to not want to believe that, right? Except for the fact that in every single instance that I've been with Maureen and that's happened, she has been physically in danger, and I've had to like pull her back, like you see on the video, me tackling her. First of all, I don't think it was a puckwudgie. Whatever it was, I don't think it was a puckwudgie that was there. I don't think she was possessed by a puckwudgie. But I will say this. What you don't get on the camera are two important things. You don't get the bookends. I brought New England Ghost Project, which is Maureen was a part of that group, out into the field because I thought they were an interesting dynamic in that they were very tech-based. And, you know, this was one of the first thermal cameras that I had ever seen because one of the members was a firefighter. So it was before people were using that as a regular kind of part of their toolbox. And yet they relied heavily on her as a medium as well. And I thought that was an interesting mix, right? Like they're really tech, and yet, you know, like they rely so much on this medium who flips out a lot and has weird things happen. And I wanted to get them into the Bridgewater Triangle, right? I wanted to get them into the Assonet Ledge, which was one of the most haunted places I've ever been able to document. And we're there, and we kind of we're talking, and we're trying to get things done, and then we decide to pack up. And as we're deciding to pack up, I'm with Andrew Lake, that's the man who's running the camera, and he's packing his equipment up, and he's walking back to the car. And all of a sudden, I was just overcome. I'm generally not, for all my wanting to experience things, I'm not overly sensitive. All of a sudden, I was just overwhelmed with something that I couldn't explain. Just like the biggest, like, gut-wrenching feeling. And I was like, uh-oh, like, what's going on here? And I said out loud, something's changed. And then I look up at Maureen, and I'm like, you know what I'm talking about, right? And before I have that sentence out of my mouth, her eyes are rolled back into her head. And then I'm like, Andrew, hit it. And so he comes running back with the camera, and there's the video, right? The end of that video, which is on his website, because, you know, he shot it, he owns it, is, and this, we weren't able to put this part on YouTube because there was, you know, the Assonet Ledge is a party place. And so up on the ledge, there are these kids shouting down at us, like these teenagers swearing at us. But what you see is when the camera comes back around and we're kind of documenting what's going on with the group, you see these balls of light appearing in the background and kind of starting to travel through the woods. And these lights are, you know, you might call them will-o'-the-wisp, you might call them ghost lights. These are what the Wampanoag call Taipaiwunkas, which are the souls of people. And even closer to the puckwudgies, they're the souls of the Wampanoag that the puckwudgies have killed. And so they're tightly connected. And you see those clearly leaving the area on Andrew's camera. Now, all that being said, what happened to Maureen? It's completely unexplained. There's that part of me that is rational and says, this is what happens when you take Maureen out. She kind of flips out sometimes and does some things, and she gets overly. I think that Maureen would tell you that she was possessed by something. But I'm not. Maybe I'm not comfortable with that. Maybe I'm not fully accepting of that. And yet, all of this other paranormal stuff was happening around it. So it's really hard to say what exactly happened on that footage. I get a lot of good feedback from it. I get a lot of like, you made this up, and then I'm like, trust me, whatever it is, it wasn't staged. It was a genuine moment that happened. What exactly happened is really open to interpretation.
Question from Shar. She is asking, do you believe, Christopher, in all your investigations, that you have found any difference between what a ghost is and what a spirit is?
I think that Now, I'm a language arts teacher by trade, right? And so I tell my students about connotation. Connotation and denotation. What is the dictionary definition of a word versus the weight that it has? I think that there is no difference between any of the things that we choose to call a ghost. It all depends on how we feel about it, as in what we call it, right? So if it's threatening to us, we might call it an entity. If it's benign or it seems to be helpful, we'll call it a spirit. You know, and it always, and if you don't believe that, think of the words that we put in front of it, like malicious entity or scary entity, as opposed to playful spirit. You know, so I think that we put the weight on the words. I don't think that there's any difference. I just think, I think there are different paranormal things out there. I don't think everything that might be considered a ghost or that is viewed as a ghost is the spirit of someone who has lived before. But I think that it's our labels on it that make it a spirit or a ghost or an entity or, you know, a phantom, any of those kinds of things.
I'm still cautioned between what my answer would be between the two. Really not sure about it yet. I mean,
okay.
In my opinion, a spirit is still, even though I don't practice religion, it's still a religious context. You know what I'm saying? Like, I hold a spirit above a ghost. Like, if my grandmother was standing behind me, I would call her a ghost, not a spirit. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
And I guess that's the way I look at it.
Spirit is someone who has, like, evolved spiritually?
I don't know if I could say it that way. I guess I put it in more of a godly context. You know, because even though I'm not religious, I still believe strongly in God, Jesus, and angels and all that, and that's what I would consider a spirit. I have dealt with the spirit of the angel of death twice. I've seen ghosts. You know what I'm saying?
I'm with you.
So,
I mean, and I think a lot of that has to do with like the way that you felt towards the spirit itself, not exactly what was the essence of what you were encountering.
True.
So because you felt a certain way about it, you labeled it a certain thing, but that doesn't necessarily make it what it is. You know, and I think we need to do that, right? Because we're dealing with the unexplained. We're dealing with things that don't have a clear-cut definition. So we have to delineate it in our minds of something that is safe or not safe, or something that is understandable or beyond our understanding. And so that's how we choose to categorize things. I don't think it's a bad thing to do at all. But I think that it's one of those, we need to understand that it's the weight that we are putting on what we just experienced and not necessarily what its true nature is. Now, you're talking about the spirit of the angel of death. Yeah, like that's a pretty heavy thing. Like you can't necessarily make that something that it is not. But the mere fact that you would not say the angel of death, but the spirit of the angel of death means that you've put something on it.
I never really thought about it that way. Damn it, man! It's Friday night. I'm not supposed.
Didn't mean to throw a wrench at you.
It's Friday night, man. I'm trying not to think too hard tonight.
I'm trying to do anything but think about where I am right now. So there you go.
Well, it's working on both sides, but that one hurt. I'm not going to lie. That one hurt. My head is like thump, 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 thump right now.
Well, let me get back to puck wedges for a moment, because it's kind of connected to what we were just talking about.
I just want to let you know we have about 3.5 minutes left.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll start it, and if you want to carry it over, you can carry it over.
Absolutely.
This summer, Tripping on Legends my partner and I went to Indiana. It had always been on my bucket list to go to Mound State Park, because that was the other big puckwudgie place that we'd always heard about. And I'd never been there, and I had never gotten a clear-cut answer for what was there. It just always was, and Mound State Park is also known for its puckwudgies, but never any stories, never anything. So it was always on my list to go there. I know there are not many people in this world who have Indiana on their bucket list in life, but it was me. And when we got there and we started to listen to not the stories of puckwudgies, but what Mound State Park was to the Native Americans of the United States, I started to reevaluate what a puckwudgie was. And this place, and we were listening to someone with a master's degree in anthropology, right? So we weren't talking to, and she has nothing to do with ghosts, right? She's strictly, here's why the people were coming here. Mound State Park lines up celestially with all these different things, beyond my understanding completely. But it was a meeting place. So people, the Miami tribe, the Delaware tribe, the Wampanoag tribe, the Cherokee tribe, tribes from out west, they all were drawn to this place, and what they would do is they would take their cherished dead to this place for burial at these mounds. And that burial often meant burning them and them becoming part of the mound. As they were doing that, they were all sharing stories of these small creatures that they were encountering, right? So if you look at the folklore of all societies, right, because you have your leprechauns, right, you have your Oz spirits down in Australia for your Australian listeners who are predicting what's going to happen tomorrow. All of them are experiencing these small, malicious creatures, these same ghost lights that accompany them, and they're all looking for what they might be. They're all trying to get their definition. Is it a spirit, right, or is it a ghost? Like the same kind of argument. What are these things? And what I discovered was that the Wampanoag were using this as a very specific type of creature that they were encountering. But the definition of the word in Algonquin is little people, right? And oftentimes little people that live in the woods, like translated out. And so the fact of the matter is they would meet here, they would talk about these experiences, and then the Miami tribe would go back and they would talk about puckwudgies. They had no word, and so they used the word puckwudgies. And the Delaware tribe was doing the same thing. And then the Cherokee, there's a lot of use of the words puckwudgie in their Native American folklore, which has now come out. And so what I started to discover was even what the Wampanoag were experiencing was not one kind of thing, right? Remember when I was talking about it, I said the first one I was told of was like a garden gnome. Sorry about that. Right?
I'm going to get you to hold on right there because you said garden gnome, and I just got the shivers there. So, Chris, we got 1 more hour to go with you, and I swear we're going to talk about your new up-and-coming events and books and everything like that. I know we haven't got to it. We've been worried about everything else, and let's face it, that's what a good conversation is all about, because we're already 2 hours in, 1 hour to go with author, researcher, experiencer extraordinaire, Christopher Balzano. 1 hour to go on Spaced Out Radio. Stick around because we're going to get to your questions as well. Make sure you type them in capital letters if you're in one of the chat rooms so I don't miss out on it. Thank you so much for being here. We got 60 minutes left. We'll be back with more SOR after this.
We're getting strange on Saturday nights. Hi there, this is Dave Cruz, and each Saturday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I will take you on a tour of the weird and obtuse on Spaced Out Saturdays, from aliens to Sasquatch and every tinfoil hat in between. We got you covered. Join us at spacedoutradio.com for Spaced Out Saturdays. See you there.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Would you like someone you can trust to look into it? We have just the place. The SOR Sightlines Report is the place for you to find answers. Whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, Dogman, ghosts, aliens, or anything strange, the Sightlines Report will get you connected with one of our expert researchers to find out what's going on. All of your personal information is kept 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report, a place for you to find the answers you need. Only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4 Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, we have Spaced Out Saturdays with Dave Cruz coming in at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. And then on Sunday, we have Elizabeth Anglin, Spaced Out Sundays. That's what we call it. I got tongue-tied there. With Cosmic Passport, that gets going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time as well. We hope you tune on in. And don't forget, after Dave Cruz tomorrow night on Spaced Out Saturdays, we have S4 with Eric Cooper and friends. I will be joining the round table tomorrow night. That starts at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern Time. I know it's late for you East Coasters, but it'll be a fun time, and I hope you stick around for that if you got nothing better to do on a late Saturday night while you're trying to get to sleep. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of the Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We're also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Terpsichorean. Terpsichorean is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect live with me during the show as well. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also join us in our Facebook chat room during this show. It's called the SOR Space Travelers. Join us in there. Some great chatter going on. You can follow me on Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. We are live on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live. You can tune us in on TuneIn and download and subscribe to our channel on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. Pick yourself up a t-shirt. You can read the encounter online. Rock out to some Bumblefoot. Join the SOR Space Travelers Club for as low as $5 a month. And you can watch some UFO Seekers and Contact TV videos as well. Everything at spacedoutradio.com. For the final time tonight, we introduce you to Christopher Balzano, paranormal author extraordinaire. You can find all of his books on Amazon, on Kindle, except the Bridgewater Triangle ones. Chris, welcome back.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
I'm working on getting those rights back to me so I can publish it as an ebook, but probably not going to happen.
Well, I hope so. For my audience's sake, I hope so. You know, before we get into a little bit of Bigfoot chatter, I want to just quickly get to a question that I missed out on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio from Dan, and he is asking, Christopher, have you been at all influenced by the work and research of Hans Holzer?
I have, especially in those early days. And what I liked about him, which is I think kind of interesting in terms of the way that he's viewed now, is that he approached investigating, or he approached trying to understand the paranormal by any means necessary. So he was not afraid to delve into parapsychology, but he was as equally comfortable table tipping, and I think that a lot of his ideas helped to shape the way that I thought about the paranormal in the early days. And I think it's interesting now because so many people who are consider themselves science-based investigators still continue to cite him, and I'm like, he was the furthest thing from a scientific investigator of this kind of stuff. Like, whatever it took to try to understand and to try to communicate, he was willing to do. And so I've always appreciated that part of it. So yeah, definitely. Although, if you're from New England, New York is not New England. So I'm a little mad that, in some of his writings, he often included New York as part of New England. We're very happy of our selected states, and most people from Boston especially don't want to be associated with New York. But other than that, he was awesome.
I'm a Yankee fan, so
we won't get into it. We already had a Bruins discussion.
You know what's funny? And I have to say this: I wear my New York Yankees ball cap everywhere. Everywhere. Goes with me everywhere I go. Except when I went to Boston last year. I was afraid to wear it.
Well, you were in Connecticut, so you had a 50-50 chance of people liking you or not liking you. But, I've stopped wearing any of my sports gear out because whether it's a random person who wants to have a conversation with me about the game last night, or more often than not, it's someone who wanted, hey, you cheetahs! I'm like, I'm just wearing a shirt. I'm not advocating for deflated balls at all. I'm proud of where I'm from. So I've just stopped wearing my gear out anywhere now, and I just go with comic book shirts. So
it's just simpler. It's much simpler.
Yeah. And here it's, everyone wants me to pick a side of the, what Florida college football team I want to endorse, and I just walk around with my Boston College hat on because I'm like, we don't offend anybody. We don't win. So unless you're talking college hockey, we don't win. So
I know that
we
feeling.
don't offend.
I know that feeling. I watch who comes out of Boston College every year for my hockey draft that I do. You have to. Yep. You have to.
Yeah, Boston College and BU. So
for sure. For sure. All right, I wanted to tell you a little bit of a Bigfoot story because last year we found some Bigfoot prints in this area, and I was absolutely surprised because last year a good friend of mine found a print on a logging road, and it was only one because Bigfoot tracks for some reason only come in one. Rarely do you find two or three or more, and so
they spend a lot of time skipping.
Exactly. So. The funny part about it was we went back and we saw the print. It had been driven over, the original print that he saw, and we went into the bush. And this is going back to October last year. Go into the bush, and literally about 150 feet into the bush, we find another print. This one is about 5 inches smaller and about 2 inches less in width. And I was absolutely amazed. So that we found it, and excited, and we set up this rock pile beside it, and didn't go back. Finally got it. We were planning on going back into the area, and the forest fire happens right nearby. So I just went back there a week ago with my friend Corey to show her where the print was. And, I don't carry a weapon or anything, and I probably should because there's grizzly bears in the area and cougars in the area. And we walk in, and I'm making as much noise as possible, telling the animals we're unarmed, and, we're here to check out the Sasquatch prints. I'm showing my friend where it was. Please leave us alone. And there is no noise, nothing, and we're fine. So we walk another 40, 50 feet in, and kind of stop, and I'm like, okay, I think it was over here, because it starts looking the same everywhere. The forest is so dense. Take three more steps in, and hear this come at us. Yep, we're out of here. So Corey and I leave, right? It was just that quick because, I'm not about to make a meal, and I really didn't want to have to trip her. Right? In case we got followed up. Thank goodness we didn't. So I went back there earlier this week with my new Sasquatch hunter named Mark, who I'm training in regards to it. Mark's an avid tracker. He's been tracking for 30 years. And we walk right by the print. Can't see it. And then all of a sudden, about 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, I'm like, damn it, man, it has to be around here somewhere, the area where it was. And lo and behold, the print is still there.
You're kidding me.
I'm not kidding you. It's been shuffled over by animals. But the cool part about it is, and if you go to my Facebook page, I actually posted it earlier this week. I posted the original photo from when we found the print to the new ones that we found. Or to the other day. The cool part about it is, in the original photo, where the toes were, there was moss covering over top of it. Well, because it's been so dry here, the moss is now dead, and you can actually see the roundings of the toes in the print now. Even though the back heel part of the print has been, beat up either by a cougar or a deer or a moose or something along those lines. Right. But it was so cool to see, man, that, 10 months later, that print was still there. And by the way,
able to get a cast of it?
No, it's too beat up now.
Yeah.
But the cool part about that whole story is, Mark, literally, who's been tracking animals for 30 years, and he was picking out prints that I walked right over. And he's like, "Oh, do you see the wild horse print here?" "Where?" "Well, it's right here. Can't you see it?" And I'm like, "How the hell did you see that?" Just one of those moments. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Excuse me. And so, Mark, it was so cool because here's a guy who has been hunting and tracking for 30, 35 years since he was a youngster. He's my age now, in his mid-40s, and literally he's leaning down and he takes out one of his shotgun slugs and puts it in the print. It's about a 2-inch slug, and he leans out, and I said, "Well, Mark, what do you think?" And he goes, takes a deep breath, and he says, "Dave, I've been tracking for 30-plus years. I have never seen anything like this before. I don't know what the hell this is." And all of a sudden, he went into tracking mode, and we're trying, forwards, backwards, trying to figure out where this came from. Couldn't find any other evidence. I mean, it's 10 months old, right? But now, addicted. Absolutely addicted. Yep. Because I showed him that one print. I said, "Welcome to the world of Sasquatch. The biggest pain-in-the-ass mystery you will have ever." Ever.
Yeah, and that's, I think, except for maybe ufology, which is, even harder to grasp unless you have, what do you do other than document experiences? If you have some kind of connection to science, maybe you take soil samples or something like that. But yeah, I mean, Bigfoot is, down here we have skunk ape, and we also have out in Astor, their own version of Champ. And, Natalie was like, "Well, are we going to look into those?" And I'm like, "Of course, we'll trip those, but we'll never find anything." I mean, if looking for a ghost is trying to grasp, air, then looking for Bigfoot is like trying to grasp air that was there last week. And so it can be completely frustrating. But then you get that moment where you touch the unknown, and it's impossible to not want to continue with that. If your intention was to go look for it yourself. And like I said earlier, so many people who are into the paranormal, whether as a consumer or whether it's as an investigator or whatever they do, it's because they experienced something.
Oh, for sure. And it's funny because with Mark, I talked to him a few days later. I said, "Still weirded out?" He goes, "I can't get it out of my head." He's like, "I can't get it out of my head. What the hell is that?" And I said, "That's Sasquatch." He goes, "Dave, you don't understand. I have been tracking for 30 years and have never seen that." And I said, "Well, my friend," I said, "you also need to understand you weren't looking for it." I said,
right.
but now that you know what you're looking for," he goes, "but why is there only one print?" I said, "I don't know. That's part of the mystery. There's only ever one bloody print."
I know. Wait till you get to start getting with the, them walking into vortexes and disappearing, and that's why you can't ever find them. And
I agree with
a lot
that.
of the, yeah, I mean, it's I think it's one of the reasons why we were talking earlier, why it will never be taken 100% seriously, any of this stuff, and why it continues to drive those of us who are into it, is because, the answer is so elusive. If it was easy, then, you'd get it, you'd understand it, and you'd move on to the next thing. But that's the questions that continue to drive us.
Well,
it's like the Matrix that way, I guess.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm a firm believer that there is something supernatural about Sasquatch. I haven't figured out what it is, but I do believe there is something strange about it. I believe it's either interdimensional or a shapeshifter, one of the two. And I figure, you know what? 1,000+ years of First Nations legends in this area, I don't think that they are wrong. I do find it funny that these so-called researchers out there are refusing to even look at it because they don't believe it themselves, so therefore it can't be if they don't believe it. That picks my hide. That really picks my hide. But the whole fact is, like getting back to Mark, it's interesting to see now where this is going to bloom. Because in that area where we were, let's see, there was a giant moose tracks, a baby moose track, maybe a 1.5 years old. There was deer tracks all over the place. There was bear tracks. We didn't see any cat tracks or wolf tracks, but they are in the area. There was wild horse tracks. So you have 5 different tracks in that area where we were. And so what I did was I restacked our rock pile because I'm not sure if, I'm hoping that if a Sasquatch still is in the area, may have been scared off during the fires, but I'm hoping that they will see that we have stacked that and they'll get my scent off of that and maybe restack the rocks again. I've got pictures of the rocks that I've set up, but I'm hoping that changes. And we're also, if we find another fresh track in that area, fresh track, we're also going to take a page out of the gifting site area that I've talked to from people who have gifting sites. We're going to actually put some marbles in the ground and see if they will play with them.
And I think that's really interesting because, a lot of that stuff has evolved in like the last 15 years. So I remember, watching the old In Search Of when I was a kid, and I'm 42 now. And it was a very straightforward, just depiction of what a Sasquatch might be, what Bigfoot might be. And then later on reading some of the cryptozoology, kind of mainstays, especially like Lauren Coleman. And they were once again, very straightforward approaches. And then maybe about 15 years ago, you started to get the tree banging, right? And you started to get these things like the marbles and the stones. And so, once again, we have this idea that we have something unexplained. We have some kind of ritual that goes along with it that we feel can bring it out. And we go with it because, otherwise we're just looking through the woods trying to find tracks. And that doesn't make it visceral. That doesn't make you a part of what is going on. And so I'm not saying that any of those things aren't true or won't happen or won't elicit a response. But this is very interesting because you're getting much more in the cryptozoological field, the idea of this folklore, because once again, someone somewhere experienced something and they had a positive response from it. And so now it becomes part of Bigfoot lore, or it becomes part of giant python lore. And so, it's one of the most scientific of the creepy, unusual things that are out there, right? Cryptozoology is probably the tightest when it comes to being understood by the general public as a scientific field, right? Even though it's not fully accepted. And yet still that folklore creeps in. That folklore wants to make itself known. Those stories drive it because we want to be part of what is going on. We want it to be part of our story as well as their story.
Since you moved to Florida from Massachusetts, have you noticed a difference in the types of paranormal you're dealing with? or is it relatively all the same?
I think that, remember we were talking earlier about the way that you understand things is kind of how the paranormal manifests itself, right? I had a great teacher in high school who said, all literature is a representation of the life and times during which it was written, right? So I teach my kids that the first week, we explore it all year long. And I think in the same way, all paranormal is a representation of the life and times during which it is being experienced, right? It's a representation more of you than it is of the ghost. This goes back to, is it a ghost or a spirit or an entity or those kind of things. And what I've found is that in Florida, so many of the backstory of ghosts is different. So much of it has to do with racial tension, much more than in the Northeast. A lot more of it has to do with the almost like a frontier spirit, right? Like if you are, they call it flow grown, right? They call it, cracker culture. Like if you are a native of Florida, then there is a certain pride that you have. Probably the same pride that we were talking about when we were talking about Yankees, Red Sox. But it's this idea that you wear that on your shoulder, right? You wear that on your chest, that you are born in Florida, born and raised in Florida. And so a lot of their background stories for these ghosts have to do with outsiders, have to do with Northerners coming and causing some kind of tension, or it has to do with someone who was very folksy, right? They were someone who lived off the land, and that's why the person is still there. As opposed to in the Northeast, where you have a lot more Revolutionary War type stuff. You have a lot more Native American stuff. Although what I've come to find out is that there's actually a lot of paranormal things here that in Florida that are equated or are explained by Native Americans. So in some way, we use the word folklore, right? So folklore is a background for a lot of these paranormal, the paranormal backstory of what's going on. You need two things for folklore. You need lore, which is a story, and you need folk, right? And so, once again, all paranormal is a representation of the life and times during which it was written. The folk are the people have to connect to it, so that has to be relevant to them. So they look around what is in Florida, and that's what they connect to, right? That's who they are. They see themselves. They want to see themselves in their ghost story. People in New England want to see themselves in their ghost story. People in Canada want to see them. What happens is it's all the same story, right? It's just the wrinkle that people are putting in is their local wrinkle or their cultural wrinkle or their religious belief wrinkle. And so the stories all essentially are the same. You can take the story of Romeo and Juliet and you just change the situation slightly, but it's still this eternal story of two people who love each other who aren't supposed to be together. And that story plays itself out all over the place. It's the same kind of thing with the paranormal. The stories are the same, the not understanding, the feeling separated from what is going on, the wanting to understand it, the creepiness factor, the being drawn to that which is going bump in the night. That stuff is the same, and then people put their wrinkle on it. So you have, down here where I live in Florida, it was probably one of the hardest hit areas by the recession a few years ago. And so you have a lot of empty houses, and you have sometimes whole neighborhoods that the construction just stopped. It's the same story. Creepy person living in an abandoned house. Kids go up and they have to knock on the door, and then the ghost will appear. It's the same story, but in Florida, it's the abandoned houses from the recession. So that's one of the major differences I've seen. It's all in the wrinkles. It's not in the essence of what the story is. It's all in the kind of the way that they kind of align the characters in the story.
When you look at your new fascination with tripping on legends, do you think a lot more people need to take that road rather than the paranormal investigative type road?
I think that I think that legend tripping is more, it feeds more to why so many people are fascinated by the paranormal. And I think that once again, like I was just talking about, when we explore a legend, we don't just explore the specific site that we might be going to, we explore stories of it. So like I said earlier, we had a talking Mary statue, right? So everyone right now in the chat room, throw out where your local talking Mary statue is. And you're going to find that everyone has them, right? So we explore them from all over the place and then kind of look in. And so I think that appeal draws some people in, right? Like legend tripping is the first thing we do. When you are with your friends and you're 14 years old and you pull out the Ouija board, when you are told that there's a creepy house, like I said before, and you have to knock on the door, when you are what you're supposed to do is shut out the lights and say Bloody Mary. That is the essence of why people are drawn to the paranormal. Now, with that said, I think that people who do investigate need to open themselves up to what we're doing a little bit more, and it's a conflict for a lot of people because they want to be scientific, or what they feel is scientific, and they want to say only that which we can document exists. And I can understand that, but the essence of what we're doing, if you take away all the labels, the essence of what we're doing is trying to look at the paranormal with our eyes, right? Trying to understand the paranormal with our gut and not ignoring those things. And I think a lot of paranormal investigators should be tapping into that, and they're not.
I understand that.
And I think all of that begins with everyone needs to listen to the show. Everyone needs to go download the podcast and listen to what we're doing and make your own decision.
I agree. Yes, listen to this show. Listen to this show. We're a live show. Podcast is later, after we're done. But you can still listen in. But I can understand with what you're saying, but for those who just want that one experience, just to confirm or deny because of what they've seen on TV and they've never done it before. Let's say you're going on a paranormal tour. Doesn't matter if it's up here in the middle of nowhere or down at the Queen Mary down in Long Beach, California. There are people out there who just want to have that one experience. Would you recommend the legend tripping rather than going out on your own, buying a bunch of gear, and then finding out that you really don't know what the hell you're doing anyways?
Yeah, I mean, I totally would, because, although people say I don't think I look good in black and I don't look good angry, and I look at a lot of paranormal groups and they've got these angry faces in their pictures and they're dark and they're sinister and they're kind of like serious, and I'm like, remember when it used to be fun? Like, no one said, I want to get into the paranormal. I like ghost stories because they're serious. Like, you like ghost stories because it was fun to freak yourself out. And I think we've lost, I talked earlier about the awe. I think the awe and the fun. Should the paranormal be serious? If you feel like there is a demon in this location, no, you should not be having fun. I understand that idea. But the majority of the things that are out there in the paranormal, the majority of the things that you can touch, that you can go and experience, you should approach childlike. You should approach with a sense of awe, approach with a sense of something to happen. It bonds the people who experience it together. And I don't think that as long as you're honest with what you're doing, and that's why you're doing it, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. And I know that there's been a big pushback against that, being like, well, you shouldn't be messing with things that you know nothing about, and there are dark forces out there. And I understand all that part of it. But remember when you were like reading a ghost story when you were a kid, even if it was a real ghost story, and you kind of smiled afterwards? Why do we have to not have that in real life if we're going out to look? So yeah, I think the best thing that people can do is to find, and I think that ghost tours, like you were talking about the one that you're going on, and we've done Lizzie Borden events, and I've done some of those. As long as you're doing it legally, like you're where you're supposed to be, your eyes and your ears are open for both the living and the dead. You do research ahead of time, so go there in the daytime to see what everything is before you go there at night. Make sure that someone knows. All being safe part of it. If you've got all that stuff in check, go trip a legend, man. It's so much. It's exhilarating. It's fun, but it also can be profound. We've discovered a lot of things where we have to take a step back afterwards and be like, that was amazing that we just had that experience. This really changes the way that I feel about something.
Tell us a couple of legend tripping stories that you've been on.
Wow. Okay. So, well, one of the most interesting ones, we started with this idea, and it was an idea that I had years ago, that I wanted to spend like 2 months on the road doing nothing but documenting the ghostly legends in areas, right? And that became a week. So that's basically, we started doing things in Florida, building up to this week where we were going to hit the United States and go up the coast and visit all these different spots. And so one of the places that we wanted to get our chops straight was the Devil's Tree. And the Devil's Tree is in Port St. Lucie, but I'm sure everyone who's listening right now has a Devil Tree somewhere in their immediate area, right? Because it's a very popular legend. And so this one was, although it's very murky, which is always a great start for a legend, it was there was a man, a serial killer, and he had hung 2 women from this tree. And so if you go there, maybe you'll see them swinging from the tree. Maybe you'll have thoughts of suicide or murky thoughts in your own head. And so we felt like that is where we need to go. We need to go there. It's a great legend, great backstory. We were able to research the serial killer or the murderer and find out all this information. And we got there, and we spent an hour going through the woods, not able to find anything. We couldn't find this tree. We're like, well, that kind of looks like an oak tree, and that's an oak tree, I guess, but that's not really where it says it is. And so we were kind of frustrated, and we came out, and there was this kid who was, I think, 10 or 11 years old, and he was talking with this woman who he didn't know, who was in this playground at the park. And he said, "Hey, lady, have you heard the story of the Devil's Tree?" And I was like, whoa. Hey, kid, do you know where the Devil's Tree is? And he's like, yeah, come on, I'll show you. And so he literally, this little 11-year-old kid became our guide through, it was actually pretty easy to get to. And so we got there, and, there was no feeling of emptiness or sadness or loneliness or any of those kind of things. We didn't want to kill each other or ourselves. But one of the things we did, which we kind of got some flack for, was that we took some of the, because it's supposed to be an indestructible tree, so we took some of the bark from it because we wanted to have this kind of memento of where we had been. And so, we left, and this Port St. Lucie is on the east coast of Florida, and we wanted to go to this other Casadega, which is this famous place in Florida. We wanted to go there the next day. So we're like, let's find some place to stay. So we went to Orlando, and we started having car troubles. We couldn't find a single place in Orlando at all. And it was like, we were completely frustrated. The night had totally turned on us. And we looked at this little piece of bark. We were like, I wonder if this has anything to do with it, right? And so we tossed the bark. And from that moment on, nothing was wrong with the car. We were able to actually get on the road, and we decided just to go home. And it was one of those situations where coincidence, probably 100%, except for the fact that my co-host since then has had these horrible nightmares about the killer, about the devil. I mean, it was really one of those things where we started hearing a lot of songs about the devil on the radio, and we were making that kind of connection to it. Now, is any of that provable? Is any of that I could show this to you? No. But what we experienced there kind of became part of the story of this place. So now when people tell the story, they're like, oh, did you hear about that radio show that came here, though, that podcast? Listen to what happened to them. And so it's very weird that we've now become part of what is going on at that location. People are now putting us into those stories. So that was a really kind of an interesting one that we did. Another one we did, which was a lot more solid, was we went to the Biltmore Hotel in Greensboro, North Carolina. This was part of our road trip this summer. And, this is once again those classic things. It's almost a cliche, right? Like a haunted hotel. But we needed someplace to stay overnight, and I was like, you know what? If we're going to stay somewhere, we might as well stay in a haunted hotel. And what the background story of this is, there's two ghosts. One is of the bookkeeper, who maybe found out some sketchy stuff, and so he was killed by the people who owned the hotel. And the other one was of a prostitute, and she was thrown off the balcony of the second floor and died. Right, she died in the lobby. And so we were like, this is awesome. Like, good backstory, all that kind of stuff. We got to the hotel, just figuring, it would be a really cool story to tell. So the morning, so we went out and we tripped some legends around Greensboro that night. We got back really late. The next morning, all hell broke loose in that hotel room. One of the things that she said to do is to rummage through your stuff. Not only was our stuff rummaged through, our phones were unplugged, the trash was knocked over, and water was spilt on the nightstand. Basically, she had kind of ransacked our stuff. We're like, wow, that's kind of interesting. Once again, we don't do necessarily EVP sessions unless the backstory has to do with, someone is communicating, right? Like a ghost talks to you specifically, or that's part of the story or the lore. But we always have a tape recorder running. So we go to take our showers, and I take my shower, and then I'm there and I'm kind of brushing my teeth, and I get this cold feeling, like an oscillating fan that just goes by me. And I'm like, whoa, that was kind of interesting. And the next thing I feel, boop, someone grabs my butt.
I hope it was a friendly one.
Well, hey, you can grab it's a redheaded ghost. It's a redheaded female ghost, so she can grab my butt anytime she wants. Right? And so I'm kind of freaked out. I'm like, I was just touched. Like, it wasn't even like one of those things. There was a breeze. There was almost kind of like an entry, and then boop. And I thought that was pretty crazy. And so, I'm doing what I'm doing. My co-host is in the shower, and she's like, Chris, come in here. And I'm like, what? She's like, the water keeps going from hot to cold to hot to cold to hot to cold. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like, what are you worrying about? Like, it's probably just, if anything, it's maybe the management messing with the water of it, right? So, we pack up. We have a few more little things happen. We pack up, and we plug in the video, the tape recorder. Anyone who is interested in this, please go to Tripping on Legends, especially our Facebook page. We can get it like anywhere you get radios, you can hear this. There is constant chatter all during that. And it's stuff that specifically, like I said earlier, everyone's got their get out EVP, right? But these are very, very specific things. So, for example, when she's in there in the water, I'm talking to her about it, and you clearly hear a female voice say, "It's just water. It's just water. Like, why are you guys so amazed? It's just water." And then I say, okay, Lydia was the name of the ghost. Lydia, if you're here, turn the water cold again. And she's like, no. And so these are things that are very, very specific. Ends up, as we're listening to it, we hear all of these different conversations going on. Is it the killer? Is it, we thought it might be it might be a pair of killers that we carried over from another place that we'd investigated. But the interesting thing is that, like, she changes accents. We hear different voices. And it's one of those things where I think because we were taking notice, a lot of different ghosts were coming to talk to us. And it was something about that location that made them especially chatty.
I just want to read a couple of announcements here in regards to Hurricane Irma as she starts to break land in Florida here, if you don't mind, because I know you're in Florida right now. The governor of Florida has just stated if you cannot get out of any mandatory evacuation area, whether for fuel or any reason at all, please call 1-800-955-5504. That number, once again, is 1-800-955-5504 right now. Apparently, they will do anything in their power to help anyone get out of the mandatory evacuation areas, even if you are elderly, disabled, have pets, no money, whatever the reason, they will help you get on out to make sure you are safe. And also, all Florida people evacuating to the Panhandle who cannot afford a hotel, Baldwin County near the Florida-Alabama line just approved to open up a 44,000 square foot building in Robbinsdale, Alabama. Their phone number is 251-947-3247. That's 251-947-3247. They are prepared with kitchens, bathrooms, can hold up to 2,000 people comfortably, up to 5,000 if necessary. You know what? As someone who has been through evacuation lately, I realize it's not a hurricane like this, but with the forest fires that are up here in British Columbia, I still have friends who are evacuated right now, and this is going on 2 months. Get the hell out. Don't be brave. There's nothing about being brave. Don't be that person who says, I got to guard my house, or this isn't going to do anything to me. Get the hell out. Stop being stubborn. Make sure you make those phone calls, either to 1-800-955-5504. Okay, that's to get you out of the mandatory evacuation areas, or if you need a place to go, if you're listening in your car and you're wondering where to go to Robertsdale, Alabama. Call 251-947-3247. Sorry, I just wanted to get that in.
No, not at all. Please.
Yeah. Because, well, we want to see people survive. We want to see people stick around. Be alive. Alive is good. Don't be a ghost just yet because you were stubborn over a hurricane or a forest fire.
I'm with you. It was the debate that was going through my head over the last 2 days. Trust me.
Exactly. Oh, man, I don't know what the hell's with this planet. I think we've just pissed off Mother Nature way too much. Way too much. Honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we just haven't paid attention to this stuff. I don't think hurricanes are anything new, but it's just now we track them. Now we've got houses to be blown down, so we notice it when it hits. But it's funny because if you look at the storms, you were asking one of the things about, what's different about Florida. They have so many more legends that involve weird non-snow weather than in the Northeast. And, like we would expect, they attribute it to gods or anger or things like that. So I don't know. I think that we have definitely changed our planet. But I think a lot of it has to do with we're just able to see this stuff now. It just seems to be getting bigger and stronger though, which is the freaky part.
Yeah, they do. I would love to hear, let's bring this back into legend tripping here. Tell us another story, because that one was just fantastic.
Okay. Well, let's see. Here's sensational on different levels, depending on what you dig. So we were talking about the Mary statue. So we had heard of this haunted cemetery, and I've kind of got a dual thing. There's parts of cemeteries that I like tripping and parts of not. It has to have a specific story. I just don't want to go to a cemetery because cemeteries are supposed to be haunted. But we wanted to see this Mary statue. But we also wanted to see, there were stories of basically aerial battles being fought over this cemetery, same cemetery, and being able to hear planes where there weren't planes. And what we discovered in doing this was that there were 17, I think, 17 British RAF, Royal Air Force pilots buried with their commander, buried in this cemetery, right? And we're like, that's really strange. What's going on with that? And so we did a little more research, and we found that during World War II, they couldn't train their pilots because, they're at war. Like, the war is right directly there. And so what they would do is they would ship their pilots to Florida, and they would train in Florida. And then they would go back over and fight the war, which sounds like a really good idea, except for the fact that all the pilots that came out of Florida were horrible because they got distracted by Florida living, right? We found a quote in one of the books that said, the women of ill repute of Arcadia, corrupted them, and they ended up being the worst pilots. But it was a really interesting moment or experience because we went there. We listened to we played some British songs that were popular during World War II in hopes that that would kind of get them to talk to us or get them to experience something. But really we were able to just spend some time and be like, wow, these people gave their lives for the greater good and are not home. They're here and they wanted to be buried here. They wanted to be buried with their brothers here. And it opened up this history that I've talked about it, and most people have no idea that this was a thing. They have no idea that British soldiers came to Florida to train, right? So it's part of the history that's been lost. So we're able to unlock that. Well, that's all well and good, except for the fact that we had Mary constantly talking to us, right? So we threw out the dreaded D word earlier, debunk. So one of the things that people say, well, it's not a talking statue. It's because of, hornets and things like that. And so we went there and we were able to sit there and just talk. Like, Mary, do you have anything to say? And then my partner, who's really good, she just spent some time just chatting. And when we got back once again and we listened to that audio, we just had once again a ton of voices, and they were responding to her. They were specifically talking to her. They wanted to tell her about what was going on in the cemetery, and about there's some direct EVPs. Once again, you can kind of listen to it. There are some direct EVPs that relate to how much they like what we're doing and things like that. Like, you're very nice, you're peaceful, things like that. And it's one of those things where it's not magnificent, it's not spectacular, it's not ground-shaking evidence, but it's specific conversations with us. You know what I'm saying? It's like little moments that we felt something while we were there, and then afterwards we're able to hear that they're actually enjoying the fact that we're there. Like you were talking about the ghost earlier. Like, he wants one aspect of what's going on there to be acknowledged and for good things to happen. But then, they want that screen up as well. And that's what we're finding more and more. Do you have time for one more little one?
Absolutely. We got about 6 minutes.
Okay. So we're very big into the devil. We have a whole episode just dedicated to devil legends we want to follow up. But this one was called The Devil's Tramping Ground, which is really interesting because everything you want in a legend, it's got. And I was actually talking to a professor, someone who has her doctorate in folklore, right? And I said, she happens to also be in North Carolina. I said, oh, yeah, you went to the Devil's Tramping Ground. She's like, oh, yeah, I know that story. Da, da, da. So it's a famous story that even doctors who are analyzing folklore look at. And so the story is, and this is common in so many places around the country, there's an area that originally was in a perfect circle where nothing would grow. And the idea was that the devil was on Earth, crashed to Earth, and for some reason, North Carolina, or whatever your local area is, and he just walks around in circles thinking of bad things to do. And because he's walking around the circle, it kind of rips the area around him all around, right? And so we wanted to experience that. We wanted to go there and experience that, so we drove there. Now, what's really interesting about this location is, over time, depending on what's been popular in the paranormal, has been the explanation for why this area is clear, right? So for a while, it was because of UFOs, and that's where the UFO landed. Then there was this thing about witches, and the witches had dug it up and made the ground unusable, right? Because there was a heavy religious movement in that area at the time. Then it became, no, it's a vortex, and the vortex has so much energy that it burns it. That's the most modern one, right? So no matter what is cool in the paranormal at that time, that has been the explanation for this. So it's really cool. We went there, and it's overgrown now, so it's not even a clear path. And we did a Facebook Live broadcast from it, and we went to explore the woods for a little bit. And then because one of the legends is nothing will stay in the center. So if you put something in the center, an unseen force will throw it out of the circle. So, we drove away, went there the next day. The thing that we had put in the middle, Natalie had made this cross of wood. She put it in the middle, and it was still there. So we're like, oh well, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, it was pretty cool. Like, we talked about the legend. All that stuff was great. Well, when we got in there on the first day, I'd set up a video camera just kind of like over the whole area, and then, we kind of did what we did. We were able to get this clip, and people can, if they're looking for it, they can either go to Tripping on Legends YouTube channel, or you can just type in clank and fly. Clank, like the sound clank and fly. And what we got was, it's probably about a 20-second clip. It's a 30-second clip, but 20 seconds into it, you hear a weird noise, and then you hear a clang, like as if someone is kicking a can, and you see something fly out of the center of the circle. Not what we put, but something threw something out of the circle at that moment. Now, I've looked at it 100 times. Everyone, people have looked at it. There's no explanation for it. You can clearly see something flying out of the circle. It's not a bug. It's not an insect. It's not a bird. You hear ding, and then it flies across the screen. That was probably one of the most interesting things because we had enjoyed the folklore so much. And then all of a sudden, when we got back home, when we had gone back to Florida a week later, we looked at it, and right there in front of us, there was the paranormal.
Interesting, man. Very interesting. We got literally 2 minutes left with you, Christopher. And I would love it if you took the time to go over your books, where people could find them, your website, and what's coming up for you.
Sure. Probably the easiest way to get in contact with us or to see what we're doing is to go to our Facebook page. So facebook.com/trippingonlegends. You can also go to our website that we've got going on now, which is trippingonlegends.wordpress.com. Looking to convert that into just a regular website soon. And anywhere you get podcasts, whether it's Stitcher, whether it's iTunes, whether it's Google Play, just go there, type in Tripping on Legends, not Legend Tripping, but Tripping on Legends, and you'll find us. And it's one of those things where this is the kind of project that's fed by what people experience, right? So we want to hear your legends. We want to know what's going on in your area. We want to know, hey, wait a minute, I heard that story. Wait, I've got that same story where I live. Here's how it's different. And so you can get in contact with us either one of those ways, or you can just email me straight at spookytripping@gmail.com. And trust me, we respond because, this is what we enjoy. As far as kind of what I'm working on right now, I'm looking to create a manual for what we do and how I do it, and how it's different, but also how you can get like really good results, but also really enjoy what we're doing. So I'm shopping around my kind of how-to legend trip book right now, and I'm just getting ready for the holiday season. We already have 3 events scheduled, like library readings, and that's kind of where we get our juice from, because as soon as we say one thing to one person, they've got 3 stories that they want to tell us. So right now it's really just driven by the show and the podcast and kind of what people are experiencing. So please get back to us about what's going on where you're from, no matter where you are.
Chris, I want to say thank you so much for wrapping up the first week of September with us here, my man. That was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. We have to do it again.
Thank you very much for having me on. I hope that I hope that sometimes, like I said, investigators might get a little angry at the way that I talk, but I'm hoping I didn't get some of your audience too angry with me.
Well, the one thing I can say about our audience is we like reality in the paranormal. As much of an oxymoron that might be, but your opinion is very, very valued around here. Thank you so much. You hold on. I got to wrap this thing up, Chris.
Okay.
Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking us in the background. Little brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. He rocks us in and out of every single show. Want to say thank you to my great team, Everett Thiemer, Eric Markham from The Encounter Online, Tim Doyle at Jolene Lammers Web Design, Catherine James, social media, Bob Davis, our great announcer, and our Director of Business Development, Kim Gandy, and LMC Media, Leslie Mitchell-Clark out of Toronto. That is your Spaced Out Radio team. Also want to say tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, Dave Cruz steps into the hot seat here in SOR headquarters with Spaced Out Saturdays. He goes once again at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, and then on Sunday, Elizabeth Anglin takes over the HQ, which she brings in Cosmic Passport. Once again, everything gets going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. Everything can be found at spacedoutradio.com. I want to thank all of our listeners taking part on Twitter at hashtag spacedoutradio, along with on Revolution Radio, the SOR Space Travelers Club on Facebook. Even you, Joe, with the gnomes. Ugh, scaring the hell out of me. And everybody over on Spreaker, you guys were fantastic tonight. Keep it on up. The way you share the show, the way you spread the word, either on social media or in person, it is fantastic. Makes me feel the love. Have a great weekend, everybody. I will see you on Monday. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. Take us home.